So now, about the hat. The hat is more perplexed, like the footwear, but perhaps even more so, because it is even more prominently seen. And I have learned since those last videos I made, I learned an enormous lot about hat and why the felt is so-called always was better before. This is not true, because in the Philor Lounge I read all posts. And there's a chap who visited an old factory in the US, not Bowman, the other one, who does not do sheep wool hats, but the beaver wool, and or nutria wool, and or chinchilla, and or what's the other one, rabbit wool felt. And they use the same machinery. The last big change in machinery is that the factory has been open since 1874, Bowman since 1868, right? The last big change they made in the process, consequently, like adding a new machine that worked perhaps completely differently and all, was in the 1920s, right? And that machine is still there, alongside all the I've seen the video and the man confirms it, he visited it. And also they would have, I'm sure, changed some parts and all, but it does not alter the process in any mode. But it's true that the felt usually that is from prior to the 80s or 90s is usually better than the best quality felt made by that factory. I forgot the name of it. I shall post in the end screen the factory tour. Or by Bowman for wool felt. Bowman is like my grey hat, it was made by Bowman. That hat is terrible in the sense of the sweatband and even the trimmings, but the felt is virtually the best in sheep wool, in the bear wool, because they use merino wool. So why are all the hats always better than felt? Because the felt needs years to, atmospheric chemicals in the process to condense. Now people will tell you, yeah, the animals were better back then, yes, but even if they were a little bit healthier back then, like 100, 150 years ago, whatever, now one is ready to look at the root of the problem, whereas now anyone, even hatters, are able to see that there's a difference in felt when to touch it and wear it and more. So this cannot be due to a small difference in the quality of animal and thus the hair. No, it is due that the chemicals and reactions in the hair have not happened enough, because the felt is too new, or it may be the best of the best physically durable. So the felt has not contracted to its full contraction period, which takes about 40 years to discuss it. It takes about 40 years. But now, so when you get even if you get an older hat from the 1950s that was kept in the original box, in a good museum condition, so when you take it out, it looks as if it came out from the factory. Well, it shall be perhaps as good, because although it was not out and living with these chemical reactions, because it dates from the 1950s, now it has been way more than 40 years or 45 years, whatever, so it had time to contract and yet be impeccable. Otherwise, the best quality felt, and they do that not in Bowman, but in that factory, and some private hatters do that, but in that factory to do it for basically the best hoods, the high quality, they bury them in a big, probably 10 feet deep, perhaps not 10 feet, but 5 feet deep, 5 feet, no, maybe 10 feet, max 10 feet deep, within the earth, cover it in earth, and leave it there for at least a year, sometimes I think up to perhaps, 4 years, to have all these chemical reactions occur as quick as possible, to try that. And then to take it out, clean it, dye it, and whatever, so that the felt is condensed to its maximum condensation, right? Which also means that the hat shall not shrink, because otherwise, even the highest grade, thickest beaver hats do shrink after 4 years. So the chap has been wearing it for years and years and never shrunk, right? It was for 20 years, and then one say it was a cow keeper hat. But he was not a cat keeper. He was only, a person like me. Perhaps he spent a lot of time outside walking dogs in the hot country, but not quite a cat keeper. So he's not riding it. So the hat, after 20 years, if it was a very dark hat, because it was such a thick beaver, although he sanded it to clean it and all and wood and discarded it, it is still good. After 20 years, it stops when he dies, right? He dies after 25 years, and the hat is great. No, he does not die. No, he dies, alright? 20 years later, somebody purchases the hat, the son sold it on eBay, and he sees the size, so it is the same size, he wears it, it does not fit. He says, alright, maybe the sweatband is shrunk, so he changes the sweatband, and it still does not fit. The only way it fits is without the sweatband, so the hat is shrunk. And he thinks, why has it shrunk? It's the thickest beaver from a car keeper hat, the how thick they are. It has shrunk because now it has been 45 years. And perhaps the hat was not treated and embedded, and even if it was, sometimes they can't really know what happens, because the positive felting is that it shrinks together, so sometimes the felting it just keeps going, really. So that is what happens to a lot of hats, and most hats, even the highest grade, thickest beaver, really, so the ones that interlock as quickly as possible, the beaver wool ones. So why was I talking about that? So yeah, so the modern hats are not necessarily, people always say, you know, oh, it was better then, it was better then. To have the same type of people saying, oh, life was better 2010. I mean, 2010, how was that in 2010? I remember mostly everything. Nothing has changed since 2010 except that, you know, they went from BlackBerry to smartphone, honestly. That is the only change that occurred since 2010. What I mean is, people like to have that reactionary mindset of it was better back then. So in 1890, people would have said it was better in 1880, and so on and so forth. And after a while, you have to think, you have to go back to the dinosaur era, you know. And what they truly mean unconsciously is they feel guilty of their new freedoms, that they feel like it was better the older generation, their parents' generation, because they had been told as little children by their parents that kept telling them, you stop doing this, stop. So they feel so guilty of their improvement that they prefer to then think, oh, actually, my improvement sucks because it was better before I had improved. You know? So it is part of that mindset to think that things cannot be recreated, and when they can be recreated, say, yeah, it was not quite the same. But you have to think, for example, with the felt, it can completely be recreated. It is constantly being recreated with the same machines. Right? The only thing that changed was you know, some parts, because obviously some screws would have broken or whatever. Perhaps they repainted it with an inaccurate paint, but it does not change the process. And they use the same amount of workers, 80 workers, and all these workers are American, and they do it in the same amount of time. And the machines work at the same speed. So nothing has been altered since 1924. So you have to think that stop being in that mindset that things cannot be recreated. They can be. It's not because it is not done that it cannot be done. All right. In the 1950s, as I say in the other place, people never thought that they could have made costumes as accurate as they did in the gangs of New York. So stop thinking like that, right? Do not think like that. So now you may tell me, yes, but the bald man hat, so if, for example, if you want a Cambridge, you want or something, yeah, alright, I will, a lot of talking. So with the hats, the problem is other problems. So, for example, the only hats you find, I've talked about it, are not the bowler hats. You may see a lot of vintage bowler hats that are not, I studied it intensively on the Shillow Island. I have lots of collecting people, with a lot of them have tons of different black bowlers, and they tell you all the difference, and you see it, the difference are very gradual through the ages, and almost none of the black bowlers on Etsy or eBay or whatever, when thrift stores are from the 19th century, even the very late, or even the before 1920. They have differences, and they're quite different. How can you get one that is the same? So first of all, I'll show my actual bowler. It's not fit me anymore, but this is probably 1930s or 40s, and I was wearing it in the 1890s, dressing up in a striptease video. This is a typical bowler as found upon eBay. Sometimes advertised as Edwardian or Victorian. It is neither Edwardian nor Victorian. So now you have to understand that it did not make felt that light. Perhaps they did, at least in the US. At least for wool felt ones. The sheep. Meh. In Europe, sheep wool was not really a thing used other than for the lowest grade